Here's the truth about second position gap funding that literally no one's explaining correctly, so I'll take it upon myself. A clear-eyed look at what second position gap funding actually is, why it is so hard to find, and where it fits alongside every other gap funding structure investors talk about online in the Facebook groups. So, the truth about second position gap funding that no one's talking about: there is a third way to gap money can attach to a deal, and it's different from both the Gator method and the Morby method. It is called a second position gap funding, and it's harder to find, more restricted than most of what gets talked about online. Those conversations about gap funding focus on the two well-known structures, but second position gap funding operates by its own rules, carries its own risks, and is genuinely scarce in the market. Here's what it actually is, why it's so hard to get, and where it fits next to everything else investors commonly use. So, firstly, Gator method is a cross-collateralized, a completely separate property you own. No second lien on the deal property itself, because would you invest in second position into a random bloke's deal unless it was collateralized by a separate property? That's what you got to ask yourself on these deals. Would you put your money there? What about the Morby method? A well-known seller financing structure, widely discussed and more accessible than second position lending. Now, this is the seller carryback. You're asking the seller to become the bank. And the second position gap funding, a literal second lien placed directly on the deal property itself, scarce, restricted, and priced for risk. Doesn't really exist. So, what second position gap funding actually is? A second position gap funding means a gap funder takes a literal second lien directly on the deal property itself. This sits behind the primary lender's first lien, not on a separate property you own, but on the same asset the primary loan is already secured against. Here's a common real-world scenario. You already have a first lien from a hard money lender, then need an extra $30,000 for rehab costs partway through the deal. A second lien loan placed behind that first lien covers the shortfall. Everything stays on one property, just in two distinct lien positions. Unlike the Gator method, where the gap funder cross-collateralizes a completely different property after creative finance, this structure puts the second loan directly on the same property as the primary loan. So, no separate asset gets tied up. The deal property carries both liens simultaneously, which is precisely what makes this structure both appealing in concept and complicated in practice. So, the second lien, just as a visual outline, is the gap funder junior position behind primary, and the first lien is the primary hard money lender senior position. Understanding this stacked lien structure is the foundation for understanding why second position gap funding is so difficult to source and so expensive when you do find it. So why it is so hard to find? Let's look at that. This is not a widely available product. Most hard money and fix and flip lenders write their own loan terms specifically to prevent a second lien from being placed behind them, because it directly increases their own risk if the deal goes bad. Loan covenants block it. So most primary lenders explicitly prohibit a second lien through their own loan covenants. The restriction is baked into the paperwork before you ever ask. Direct lenders decline. At least one direct lender states publicly that they do not originate standalone second position gap funding loans because the risk is simply too high to justify the product. The market demand with no supply. Real estate investor forums and lending groups are full of people asking who even offers this, because most direct lenders simply will not touch it. So where second position gap funding is allowed at all, it typically requires the primary lender's explicit consent and a formal intercreditor agreement between both lenders spelling out exactly who gets paid first if things go wrong. That negotiation alone adds friction, time, and uncertainty to a structure most investors need quickly. So why it is risky for the funder and expensive for you if you can find it. The scarcity of the second position gap funding comes down to one fundamental reality. In a default, the first lien holder gets paid in full before the second lien holder sees a single dollar. The second position funder is last in line and sometimes wiped out entirely. The funder's risk: second position notes trade at steep discounts in secondary markets because recovery is so weak. If the deal goes sideways, the primary lender is made whole first. The second position funder may recover nothing at all. Your cost as a borrower. Funders willing to take this risk, price it accordingly. Expect a significant premium. Many lenders who understand the risk simply avoid the space altogether. Scarcity gives the few willing lenders significant pricing power. And this is exactly why investors struggle to find anyone willing to do it. Lenders who fully understand the second position risk either charge a premium that reflects the exposure they're taking on, or they don't offer the product at all. The market has priced the risk honestly, and that price is extremely high. So let's have a quick breakdown here. How this compares to the Gator method. Both second position gap funding and Gator method are secured structures. Neither one is unsecured, and both put a real asset on the line somewhere, but the mechanics are meaningfully different. And those differences determine which one is actually accessible for most investors. So your second position gap funding, everything on one property, requires a primary lender consent, difficult to source, no separate asset crossed, but extremely expensive. Gator method, cross-collateralizes a separate property, avoids primary lender's lien position entirely, more widely available, and it's a separate asset tied up. So the only reason they're actually comfortable going in on your deal to gap fund is because they've got certainty in the collateral. If you can actually find a second position gap lender and your primary lender will allow it, you avoid tying up a second property entirely, and that is the genuine appeal of the structure. But availability is limited, and the consent process adds friction, and you're still relying on someone else's asset-backed capital and someone else's terms either way. The more chefs in the kitchen. The Gator method is more available precisely because it sidesteps the primary lender's lien position altogether by using a different property as collateral, typically at a minimum of 150% collateralized. So where the Wadley method fits instead, gap funding and 0% credit card stacking, the Wadley method operate on a fundamentally different basis. They're unsecured, there is no lien on the deal property, no lien on any other property you own, no primary lender consent is needed, and there is no intercreditor agreement to negotiate. In days, no searching for one of the few lenders willing to take a second position. The stack moves quickly without the sourcing problem. No property required unless you do want to go and do a HELOC, which is going to be way better terms than a Gator lender. And you can reuse it, pay it down, reuse it again without closing costs, without going back to a negotiation table. Essentially, the entire structure is unsecured from start to finish. No lender permission, no primary lender consent needed, no intercreditor agreement to negotiate, no covenant review required before you can move. If the actual goal is covering a mid-deal rehab shortfall or a purchase gap without tying up more real estate, the stack solves that problem without requiring the primary lender's permission or hunting down one of the smaller numbers of lenders willing to take a second position at all. So see what this looks like with your deal. If you have a deal with a gap that needs covering, whether it's a rehab shortfall or a purchase gap, the right structure depends on your specific situation. Not every deal calls for the same solution, and understanding the trade-offs between secured and unsecured options is the difference between moving fast and getting stuck. What you got to understand is even with the Gator method, they're going to want a 680 credit score. Think about if you were investing your own money. Would you be underwriting the deal or the operator? I'd be underwriting the operator, because I don't care what the deal numbers look like. People can write all sorts of bull crap on paper. So head to gapfunding.com/apply and book a call. We'll walk through whether a secured option or an unsecured stack actually fits your situation better. Second position gap funding exists, but it's scarce, restricted, and priced for the risk it carries. The unsecured stack is worth understanding before you spend time hunting for a lender who pulls out at the last minute anyway. That's where people come to me. 2 days to go, hat in hand, saying, oh, this private lender's pulled out last minute or changed his terms. And then the thing is, worst case scenario, you book a call, we map it all out together, or at least you know the steps to get yourself into position to rely on yourself, back yourself. Apply at gapfunded.com/apply. I'm Mick Wadley, founder of Gap Funded. We're talking days, not weeks. Understanding it properly means understanding why an unsecured alternative is worth considering before you go looking for a lender willing to take a second lien on your deal. Let's do a quick recap. Second position gap funding, secured, second lien on the deal property, requires primary lender consent, scarce and expensive. Gator method. Secured cross-collateralizes a separate property. These people actually do exist and they want a 680 credit score. More available, but ties up another asset. The Wadley method. Unsecured, no lien anywhere, no consent needed, funded in days, not weeks. I'm Mick Wadley. Let's go close something.